I thought I was the host, but it's asking me to ask the host for permission to record.
I think I just hit the record button, Mrs. Worthley.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, it says recording now on the top screen. Perfect. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody who's joining us today. My name is Mrs. Worthley, and I am the K through 12 guidance department chair for the Medfield Public Schools. We're thrilled you could join us today. This is obviously not a typical school year, and we are trying to do our best with providing as many of our usual programming opportunities that we have for parents and for students kind of in an alternative format this year. And we're finding that we're using Zoom and webinars and things like that to try to provide as much information as we can to our students and parents, just again, like I said, in a different format. So we typically offer this program to our parents in an evening in March, and it's always one of our favorite programs, as we find that our sophomore parents are typically eager to learn about kind of next steps in high school and the future planning process, but there isn't a lot of stress or pressure yet around it. So it's always actually a really great evening for us to connect with parents. And we always enjoy it very much. So we apologize that it is through this webinar today, but however, we hope you get the same amount of information that you find useful and things that you can talk with your students about moving forward. So joining me today are all of the counselors in the office. And if you're not sure who your child's guidance counselor is, if your last name begins A through BO, students work with me. BR through E, students work with Elise DeLuzio. F through K, Ann Lodge. L through Q, Amanda Patton, and R through Z, the end of the alphabet, work with Eric Ornberg. Russ Becker is also joining us today. He is our school adjustment counselor, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about his role and what he does here as well. So our agenda for today, we like to provide just a preview of the future planning process. It's always a balancing act to figure out when the right time is to start talking with our sophomores about future planning. We don't like to introduce the topic too early because we want our students to be able to really focus on high school and the transition to high school and be present in high school. But we also realize that for many of our sophomores, they are already thinking about what comes after high school. So again, it's a balancing act as to when is the right time to introduce some of these topics. So with that said, on Friday, we are going to meet with students during science classes, and we have a whole sophomore curriculum that we like to do with students. And again, we're paring it down a little bit this year, but a lot of the essential information that we want the students to kind of walk away with, we will be presenting to students this week. We're going to talk a little bit about high school in general, and the course selection process is right around the corner, as I'm sure many of you are aware. So we're going to talk a little bit about time management and stress management and what that looks like for our students kind of here and now while they are at the high school. And then we've also put together some pre-recorded sessions for parents to take a look at, which we will follow up with as well, regarding various future planning topics that don't necessarily pertain to everybody, but we feel like it's good information for parents that that information does apply to, have that information available to them as well. So one of the things that I wanted to start with today is just to kind of let parents know what's to come. You know, I know there's always a rumor out there that everybody says, oh, the junior year is most important year of high school. And while we think every year is important year in high school, the junior year does offer some kind of extra things to start thinking about and considering as our students move forward. So it's important for us to kind of give you that information now so you can just start to think about what's to come. So we'll start with our juniors. We'll have the opportunity to take the PSATs in October of their junior year. We'll offer that for all of our juniors that are interested in taking it. And it's a really great opportunity for our students to have that one practice standardized test under their belt so they can start to think about what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, maybe things that they need to work on before taking the actual SAT moving forward. And so with that, you know, taking the SAT or ACT usually starts happening in the winter of junior year. We offer again, typically in a normal year, we offer the SAT here in October and in March at Medfield High School. The March SAT is a great time in the winter for our juniors to take that here. So that way then they can plan out the rest of their spring to figure out what other SATs they might want to take moving forward. We'll start doing a lot of work with juniors and usually around end of November, early December, around doing some college searches to start using the resources that we have here, Naviance, the College Board, the Princeton Review, so, some of the features that we have, so that way students can start to think about what colleges are out there that might fit their needs. February vacation, again, in a typical school year, February vacation is a really busy time for our juniors to get out and start visiting colleges. We always love to recommend that students get to visit colleges while the school is in session, so that way they have the opportunity to be on the campus, see the other students there, go into a dorm, go into a classroom, go into the cafeteria, just to really get that kind of vibe of the school to see if they feel like it might be a good fit. Now, again, this year, a lot of that has changed because of the pandemic, and the colleges are really doing a great job trying to provide a lot more virtual opportunities for students to visit, if you will, their colleges. But hopefully, in a couple months, some of these visits and opportunities kind of will be back to normal for our current sophomores. And again, we're going to talk about course selection today. It's really important that our schools are, or our students are thinking about continuing the path that they're on, that we want to make sure that students are challenging themselves, but they're also being realistic with their priorities and their activities and being able
Hi, folks, bear with us a little bit. I think Mrs. Worthley may have just frozen up. If you could just hold tight, we will see if we can resolve the situation.
Hey, am I back on? Can people hear me now?
Yes.
All right, does anybody know where I left off?
You were out for about 45 seconds, Mrs. Worthley.
About when, you think?
Hmm.
All right, sorry about that, everybody. Let me share my screen again and find my PowerPoint. Well, I think I was talking about the junior timeline, and I will just jump into kind of spring of junior year. I was talking a little bit about how it's a great opportunity for students and parents to really start visiting some colleges, going to college fairs that are in our area, so that way students have the opportunity to have some face-to-face time with college admissions reps to have conversations about what they're looking for in colleges, and for admissions reps to tell students about what they have to offer at the colleges as well. One of our pre-recorded sessions is about kind of additional things that students are looking for in colleges, such as art programs, athletics, things to that nature. So spring of junior year is a really important time to start thinking about what supplemental material might be needed for applications. And then we will talk with students about asking teachers for letters of recommendations before the end of junior year as well. So when our juniors leave for the summer, we really encourage kids to use that summertime to really start to refine their list of schools. That doesn't mean that they need to come back to school with a concrete list of schools that they're planning to apply to, but have a general idea of where they might like to be applying to in the fall. You know, we'll talk with students about registering for fall SATs if that's appropriate. I always encourage students to start filling out the common application over the summer, because once senior year comes, our students typically are busy, they're active between all of their classes, their after school activities. You know, life gets very busy. So if students can come back to school with a rough draft of their common application complete, maybe some essays done already, I think they'll feel like that they're in pretty good shape to get started in senior year. So junior year, and we will send constant information to parents and students about this. We offer newsletters to our juniors that go home once a month right now with everything that students should be thinking about kind of in a timely manner. So all of this stuff that I've talked about and I've mentioned, you know, through our timelines, we will share with you again junior year. We just feel like it's something that's important for you to be aware of, that we introduce some of these things kind of slowly throughout different seasons. So that way students aren't thinking about all of it at the same time, but in smaller portions at once. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Amanda, who's going to talk a little bit about the work we're going to do with our sophomores on Friday.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm Amanda Patton, one of the guidance counselors. Stephanie, do you want to keep clicking through the PowerPoint until we switch over? Okay, perfect. So on Friday, the guidance counselors are going to be going into sophomore physics classrooms to go over a couple of different topics that you can see here. So we'll be introducing Naviance. We'll be talking about different career assessments that are available to them, as well as a few other resources. So Elise and I are going to give you a little preview of some of those resources so that you have a good sense of what we're sharing with your sons and daughters. I think it'll be helpful to talk with them a little bit about their career assessment results, and it might help them pick their courses for next year. So next slide. So a little bit about Naviance. So Naviance is an online platform that can be used for college and career searches. They have career assessments, resume writing opportunities, and then later on in high school, students will use Naviance for their teacher letter of recommendations to be sent. We'll send their transcript through Naviance. They can let us know the schools they're applying to, and they'll also be able to do college searches through Naviance as well. So only students have accounts, not parents, but we do encourage students to kind of share Naviance with their families, just so that the whole family can use it as a tool. Next slide. So the first assessment, actually, Stephanie, I'm only able to see half of the slide. Is there a way to shift the slide over so I can see the left-hand side? I don't know if that's my view. Okay. That would be great. Perfect. So the first assessment is a career assessment called the Career Interest Profiler. So we're going to have all 10th graders take this assessment over the next few days. Their physics teacher will assign this as an assignment, not for credit, but just as an activity for them to do before we present on Friday. So the Career Interest Profiler gives students some information about their own specific interests, and then provides examples of jobs that might be a good match for their interests. So in just a minute, I'll show you a sample student and what their results look like, so you have a sense of the information that will come out of that assessment. If we go on to the next slide, the other career assessment we'll be doing is called the Career Cluster Finder. So the Career Cluster Finder gives you an idea of career fields that may be a good match based on your personal qualities, your interests, and what you enjoy studying in school. So we'll have students do both of these career assessments and then be able to use their results as a resource to help pick their course selections and really start thinking about life beyond high school. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to go into Naviance and give you a little bit of a preview of what that data looks like. Okay, is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. So this is the career interest profiler. So after students finish answering the career assessment questions, they will get a result that looks like this. So you can see this breakdown here of these different types of occupations and kind of what career category they might fall under. So this person it's actually me who took this assessment, so you can get a little preview into me. But this person, it identifies occupations in the social field that might be a good fit for me. And then it defines what social means. So social occupations frequently involve working with, communicating with, and teaching people. These occupations often involve helping or providing service to others. So in my case, my career interest profiler definitely sounds like me. I'm a guidance counselor, so it makes sense that I'm in this role. If I scroll down here, you can see that realistic careers are not as perfect as a match for me. So these types of occupations involve work activities that include practical, hands-on problems and solutions. They often deal with plants, animals, and real-world materials like wood, tools, and machinery. Many of the occupations require working outside and do not involve a lot of paperwork or working closely with others. So again, it kind of breaks down the types of careers that might be a good fit based on your interests and how you answer the survey. So they'll get this list here. And then if they want to look beyond that, they can click on View Matching Careers. And I think this is really interesting. So it breaks down all these different careers based on level of preparation. So you can see, here's an example of a job that, has in that social category that requires some preparation. So that may include a high school degree or maybe some training after high school. And as you scroll down, you'll see more jobs that fall within medium preparation, considerable preparation, just to give you a sense of how much training and education do you need to access these jobs. So as I'm looking through some of these, if I see something that sounds interesting to me, like a school guidance counselor, I can click on that and I can learn a little bit more about that specific occupation. So you can learn about kind of what career category this specific job falls under, so social, artistic, and enterprising. You can see similar jobs to this specific job. You can see college majors you might want to major in if you were to pursue this job, and then related career clusters or pathways, which we'll talk about in a minute. If I scroll back up, you can click on knowledge and skills to learn about specific skills that you're going to want to have to be successful in that role, as well as important abilities that you want to make sure that you have. If you click on this tab here, it gives you examples of typical tasks and activities that you'll be doing in your day-to-day work. So I think this is really helpful for high school students to take a look at. They may have heard about, certain jobs in general, but they really don't know exactly what that job is like on a day-to-day basis. So this should give them a good sense of whether or not they would enjoy this job by looking at those daily tasks and activities. And then last, you can see this tab here. It gives you on average how much you can expect to make in that job in Massachusetts. And if you want to see the average for different states, you can click on this as well. So this just gives students a general idea of the type of lifestyle and salary they can expect to make if they were to pursue that career. So that is the career interest profiler. If I go back, I will show you the career cluster finder and what that data looks like. So here's the career cluster finder. And essentially this survey will give you an idea of different kind of career categories or fields that might be a good interest, a good fit for you. So when I took this assessment, it highlighted that hospitality and tourism is kind of my highest match in terms of a career field, as well as human services and health science. If I click on show more, you can see all kinds of other career clusters that you could click on as well. So let's say I decide to explore human services. I can do that. It gives me a description of what a career in human services might look like, an employment outlook, classes you may want to take to prepare yourself, and then specific occupations that fall within that career field, as well as related college majors. So as you can see, a ton of different information, and I feel like this can really help students figure out, okay, what are those careers and that are of interest to me kind of beyond high school, and what courses do I want to take at Medfield High School to kind of learn a little bit more about that career and kind of prepare me for that life after high school. Some students, when they take these career assessments, they find that their results don't really sound like them, and that's okay. It's not a perfect assessment. So if they feel like their results don't sound like them, they can go into the career cluster results, and they could type in a specific career that they're interested in and get all of that same information. So again, I don't want them to feel discouraged if they're not happy with their results. They can certainly still type in specific jobs they're interested in and get the same information. So that's a little bit about the Naviance assessments. I would say, definitely check in with your son and daughter about their results. I think it can make for an interesting conversation at home about kind of where they see themselves and their strengths and interests. So I hope they enjoy taking these and find it useful. I'm going to turn it over to Elise, who's going to talk a little bit about another resource that we'll be going over with them as well.
Hi, so I'm Elise DeLuzio, another one of the guidance counselors here at the high school. And as Amanda mentioned, she just showed you two of the fantastic assessments within Naviance. And I'm going to talk about two other resources that are outside of Naviance that we really highly recommend. And just to point out, you'll notice when we talk about these research tools and these assessments, what they are all really aimed at is helping students make connections between three things, and that is their interests, possible college majors, and possible careers. So really trying to look at what your child is enjoying in school, what they're passionate or interested about so far, and then what might be an interesting field of study for them in college, and what maybe is a career that of interest. And I think it's also important to know our goal is not for your sophomore to know what they definitely want to major in college or what career specifically they want to have. I know some students have some ideas of things that they're really interested in, but many do not. Many will change their minds a million times. Many adults are still figuring out what they want to do. So our expectation is not that they, narrow down a field or a major or career, but really just that we want to expose them to all of these different options and have them kind of dive in and do some exploration and see what looks interesting. And as Amanda said, kind of use that information to guide their classes here at Medfield High School. So the first resource I want to talk about is it's called My Big Future, and it's on the College Board website. So that's College Board's the same company that runs the SAT and PSAT. And what we really love about this resource is that those two boxes on the slide there, that's pulled directly from the website so you can see it. It allows students to make a connection directly between college majors and careers. So for example, we will sometimes have students say, I'd really like to be a nurse. What do I need to study in college? What would I need to major in to become a nurse? So in that case, they could use this website and use that box, career categories on the right-hand side, and go within there, find nurse, and then get the full breakdown of what college would look like. What sort of classes would they be taking in college? What would the majors be called? And what classes would be helpful to take in high school. So for students that have a possible career in mind of interest, this is one way to really dive in to see what the program of study would look like to get to that career. And then conversely, you can search by majors. So we will often hear from students that say, oh yeah, I think I'm interested in business, or I think I'm interested in math, but what kind of job could I have? What does that mean? If I study math in college, what kind of career can I have? So then you could use that major categories box and basically do the reverse search of what the career search was. So look within that major, see some of the potential careers, and learn more about the skills needed, the salaries, and some of the similar information from Naviance, but really just diving in further to that potential interest to see what they could do with it if they choose to study it down the road. So the second resource, this one is a lot of fun. This is called the Reality Check. And there's some instructions on the slide here because the website links at the top, and it's for the state of Massachusetts. So you can access the correct page by entering in Medfield and the Medfield zip code. But it's a fun assessment that asks you questions about how you envision your lifestyle down the road, once you're done with high school and college, and it goes through every aspect of your life. For example, do you envision yourself living in Boston or in a suburb if you're thinking of staying in Massachusetts? Do you envision for transportation? Do you think you'll ride a bike, take public transportation, have a car? Do you plan to have cable? Do you plan to have a cell phone? Do you plan to live in a house or an apartment or have roommates? And it really goes through every aspect of sort of a lifestyle. And at the end, it gives a grand total of how much money you would need to make in a given year to support that lifestyle. So I love doing this assessment with kids. Oftentimes that grand total comes back very high, and students are sometimes surprised by how much money they would need to make. But what's really wonderful about it is that once it gives you that salary that you would need to maintain the lifestyle you've selected, you can then see what careers could you pursue where you would make this salary. And you can click further to see, okay, if you're interested in this career, what sort of major would you need? And which colleges actually offer that major? So you can really break it down further. But it also it spurs some fun conversations with students about sort of what are necessities, what are dreams, what's realistic. And it kind of takes the different approach of looking at lifestyle versus starting out with interests or majors. So that's another one that we guide students to take that I strongly encourage everyone to check out. So with that being said, I am going to turn it back over to Amanda to talk a little bit about balance and mental health.
So I think that's going to be Eric starting on this slide. Is that right?
Yep. Hi,
Okay.
folks. Again, thank you very much for coming out. We've got about 50 attendees here, which is fantastic. This week does kick off, as Mrs. Worthley said, the course selection, kind of future planning, and the gates certainly open up a little bit more for juniors next year. And we're excited because we're going to have a brand new schedule next year, which is going to include a flex period. So we're excited to talk to kids about this. I put these two quotes up here because I think it's a very severe juxtaposition. One of our retired math teachers said this one time. I think I bring it up at every parent event that I'm at, that kids have their whole lives to learn, but they only get to grow up once, and that's what high school should be. It shouldn't always just be college prep. And years ago, we showed a film called The Race to Nowhere. And after one of our students had said, "I don't come here to learn, I come here to achieve." So I think those are some very bold statements. And as your children are picking courses for next year and thinking about what their involvements, and everyone is hoping and anticipating that we get out of this COVID situation, time's going to become another huge factor for us. And where do we want to put that time? So if we could go to the next slide. And one of the questions that we are asked every year as guidance counselors that we could debate for 100 years, is it better to get a B in an honors class or an A in a C1 class? And I think it's important to keep in mind that that question ultimately is getting at the question of balance. How balanced should my kid be? And how much can they take on in a classroom and outside of a classroom? And just to give you a little bit of a history lesson, years ago, we had 7 mid-year exams for all kids in all grades. They took 7 tests in a 4-day period in January. The students went to the administration, talked about, could we please put a weekend in between these so we could have a little bit of a break, which happened. And then a couple years later, we eliminated mid-year exams except in math and world language. And then this past year, we had no formal mid-year exams. And next year, we're actually going to give every kid a flex period, and every teacher and counselor will be available during that time period for kids to access support and help. So this is how far we've come to try to balance the scales as a high school. And change, certainly it takes time in education for change to come about. But this is a big question to have in the coming weeks as kids are picking their courses. You know, if they want to lean into an honors level class, hopefully they want to be there. They want to get after it, and they have the strong desired interest, and they're not trying to make a nameless, faceless admissions counselor from 2 years down the road happy. Balance is a huge, huge thing. And I think as our office and school moves to this new schedule, we're going to be able to create that. Carrie Curley, one of our special educators, said, you know, we claim to be a college prep high school, but we don't always give kids time. We structure them for every minute of the day. And next year, we're going to give kids that time where they can study for a test. They can go see their guidance counselor. They can go to extra help in a class. They will be empowered to make a decision for 30 or 40 minutes a day as to where they want to put their time. So as guidance counselors, we're certainly charged with trying to keep kids' head and feet in the same spot with one eye towards the future. And I try to break down the 4 years for folks by saying ninth grade is a huge transition year. And it was obviously disjointed last year for your children, almost a year ago when we went remote. Sophomore year, the ante gets raised a little bit. They have 2 levels of MCAS they have to pass. Hopefully kids are pulling at your jackets to get their driver's license. That's a huge non-academic rite of passage that speaks to independence. It speaks to responsibility. It speaks to, learning a new skill set. And kids who do not get their driver's license, that oftentimes can be a red flag or an area of concern for kids. And then junior year, once they've figured out high school, we start telling them, let's start making a plan for getting out of here. And what do you want to do in terms of future planning? And if you don't want to go to a traditional 2 or 4 year school, what will that look like? And then senior year, it's the Wild West. And this is a very simplified split here, but there's a lot of diligence the first semester when our students are applying to college and they're zoned in on term 1 grades. And then second semester, senioritis strikes almost the most strong-willed senior. We have to balance that to get them to that longest summer of their life. And that's a journey for both you and for the members of the school system. But as they go through each of these transitions and changes, it does go back to the root of how balanced you're going to be with your extracurricular activities on top of academics, on top of future planning, on top of taking SATs and ACTs. Those are the questions that we reveal to you now that are coming in the junior year, and it usually starts off right with the PSAT in October. So some essential questions, things to ask at the dinner table over the course of the next couple of weeks, if you haven't already. What is success? How do you define success in your home, academically and otherwise? When you look at your students' course selection, what's on there for fun? That's purely out of their own interest and fun. What's considered an acceptable, non-fatal failure that kids can make? Kids that don't get their driver's license sophomore year, or they get cut from a team. Those are discussions that we think are really important to the entire high school experience. And are you okay with your children making non-fatal mistakes and making errors or doing poorly and then having to respond to that test or that quiz? How are we empowering them? Chris Herron is a great public speaker. He's been to Medfield a number of times. I think it was a year, maybe 2 years ago, that he came and spoke, and he challenged the kids. Are you truly the person that your parents think you are? And as they become 16 and 17 and they are driving and their friendships are changing and there are other temptations and distractions out there on social media and in other, capacities, when you have these discussions about future planning and you have these discussions about where you want to put that time, have that discussion with your kid. Like, is this who you want to be? Is this, a part of what you want your education here in Medfield to be and beyond? I think these honest conversations really help frame a very positive high school experience. And just in terms of COVID takeaways, it's hard to have a sophomore information session and not talk about this. My hope is for all of the kids over the past year, and it certainly varies from student to student, that opportunities for self-advocacy and independent motivation and self-discipline have availed themselves, and that hopefully kids have explored other areas of interest during the days and weeks and months that we've been shut down, that they've taken up a skill or a hobby, or they've done something non-academic that's drawn their interest in. It has certainly been a very, very long haul, but COVID has certainly forced us into learning some other life skills. And this is stuff that kids will write college essays about a year and a half from now. This is the stuff that they will reflect upon. This generation of students, I think, has provided all of us with an example of a different style of resiliency and grit. And my hope is that that's going to carry them beyond grades and GPAs. But when the world gets a little bit hard for them and the path can't be cleared for them, that they will be able to reflect back on these times. And lastly, this article was in the Boston Globe last week. And I think in our journey this week as guidance counselors, we've met with the wellness department, talked to some individual teachers about assessments, and progress reports are coming out. One of the overarching things was the expectation should not stay the same if the circumstances have not stayed the same. And the school circumstance the last year has certainly been upside down and inside out. But I think it's important too that the expectations you have at home are also different than they would be in a typical year. And that we've allowed kids maybe more screen time than they should have, but we've tried to engage in other components to find that balance, both academic and otherwise, on those remote days when they're home. And hopefully they have going to come out of this a stronger group of kids, and that their junior year or even the spring is going to be a much more positive experience. And maybe that will create a whole level of appreciation for all of us as educators and students. And now I'm going to kick it over to Mr. Becker. He's going to talk a little bit about mental health. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. In a typical year, Eric and I are jockeying for time, and I've noticed that he's very strategically placed himself first. So I'll do my best to work through this very quickly. Again, thank you for the introduction, and for everybody here, thank you for coming. I'm Russell Becker. I'm the school adjustment counselor. You might know that title better as a school social worker. If you're unfamiliar with what I do, I work one-on-one with our students here in this building who might be challenged with more social or emotional issues. We'll get into some of the stress, some of the balance, and some of, I guess, what those mental health issues might look like specifically for sophomores and or juniors in a second. But down there, you can see my email. At any point in time, if you feel as if your child needs additional support, whether you feel like I could be that additional support, where you don't know where to turn, at any point in time, please feel free to reach out to me at that email, or you can reach me via the phone system as well. I'm always happy to answer questions, and I'm always happy to meet as many students as I can. So in regards to balance, in regards to the sophomore and junior, I guess, difference in balance and stress, it becomes an imperative discussion to have this year, because as you can see, things can change very rapidly, and very quickly they can get out of hand. Those statistics right there are taken from the most recent Metro West Health Survey report that showed that at the time, 25% of our sophomores were listing life as being very stressful, which jumps to 53% of our juniors. In a typical year, our sophomores are some of the most comfortable people in the building. They're no longer the lowest man on the totem pole. They've learned a lot from their freshman year. They've sort of taken those lessons and they're running with it, and they're finding a lot of success with their sophomore year. However, as you can see, there's a major difference between the experiences of our sophomores and juniors. Why is that? Oftentimes, our sophomores take that newfound momentum and they want to run with it. They start considering higher level classes, more difficult classes, but they also don't take into account the other areas of growth that might coincide simultaneously with those classes. So they're looking at APs, they're looking at honors, but they're not thinking that, well, I will probably be on a varsity team, or I have to take the SATs, or I have bigger commitments for theater or my other extracurriculars. Oftentimes these things all coincide, which leads to a huge uptake in our students' stress and a huge uptake in their degree of overwhelm. In addition, what we know is that stress rises, anxiety rises, our levels of depression rise, which oftentimes make junior year a very difficult year for our students. In addition, these are kids talk, and our kids are specifically very competitive here. What we see is that right now with course selection, our kids are comparing their schedules to the schedules of other people. They often deem that what they think they're going to take isn't enough because they're comparing it to other students who might be taking one more AP. And so what happens is, if they find that a student is taking 2 APs, they want to take 3, which then leads to 4, which then leads to 5. And that's how you get students in AP physics who despise Isaac Newton and everything that he may have stood for. The truth is that once our kids develop that mindset, once they live in this really competitive experience, it's really hard for them to take additional perspective and see that they're overloading their schedules. That's why they need help, and that's why they need to sort of begin having this discussion now at home to make sure that they are going to be able to strike an appropriate balance next year and the year after that, to make sure that they are not just successful here, but they are happy and they are able to attend to everything that they're going to need to throughout their high school career. If any of you have ever been to a middle school presentation with Matt Morangi, this is probably a very familiar slide. This is the stress curve that he really harps on down there. The idea is that we want our students to live in this optimal performance of stress. We want them to be stressed a little bit so that they're really doing as much as they can. We don't want them to be bored. We don't want them to be unmotivated. But what we see, instead of this goal of being in this optimal performance, the vast majority of our juniors live in a greater degree of anxiety, and some have a complete meltdown. So the question, perfect. The question, Stephanie, is why are we doing this? And I have these conversations very frequently with families, with kids, and I ask them, I mean, you're unhealthy, you're clearly not happy. Why are you doing this? Every single time I get the same answer, they look at me dumbfounded and they will ask, how else will our kids get into college, you moron? I understand that. However, I do have an additional idea if you're willing to pursue other options. Voila. So Stephanie, you can hit the next one as well. Normally, just so we're clear, when I'm giving this presentation, this would be the time where I pause for laughter to die down. Not quite the same via a Zoom presentation. But the truth of the matter, so if you're not familiar, that is Lori Loughlin. I forget the name of the other actress, but the T.M. Landry College Prep was a school in Louisiana who recently got into a ton of trouble because they were forging their students' transcripts to get them into Ivy League colleges. What this goes to show is that the college process is out of control. It is a completely illogical system that is causing people to behave illogically. What happens too, as parents, as school, as family members, we look at all of these other families who are behaving illogically. We see what they're doing. It doesn't quite make sense, but we feel like if we're not doing that, then we must be falling behind. Stephanie, you can hit the next transition. Thank you very much. So it begs the question, sure, we understand that this is an insane system. We understand that our kids are not healthy. We know that they're very stressed, but is it worth it? Is it worth really stressing our kids out, pushing them to the degree that we're pushing them if the payoff at the end of the day is worth it? Statistics appear to say no. So most families and students, when we have the college discussion, they often talk about wanting to get into the top 10% of academic institutions in the country. So if you graduate here and you're going to a top 10% college, that's something that you're going to be proud to put on the bumper sticker and really talk about and really, be excited about for that next step opportunity. I don't know if you know this, but currently there are over 4,700 colleges and universities in America today. So what this means, and I am terrible at math, but I'm pretty sure this is correct, a top 10% college in America equates to over 470 schools for your child to choose from. In addition, the expected lifetime earnings for any of those top 10% schools are the exact same. So essentially what I'm saying is the upper echelon of those schools, the Ivy Leagues, the Stanfords, the things that people really push themselves for, they don't earn any more. They're not allowing themselves any better of an opportunity to succeed than any other school within those top 10% barometers. In addition to the top 75% of any of these schools will make more in their lifetime, and they will have a higher quality of life than the bottom 25% of those upper echelon Ivy League schools. So what does this tell us? It essentially means that the educational playing field has been leveled. The internet is an incredible thing, and it allows our students access to the same amount of information, whether or not they are going to Harvard or whether or not they're going to any other school. So it matters far less where our students go to college and much more about who they are when they arrive and what they're able to do once they get there. So in terms of balance and in terms of their workload now, in terms of how it's probably worth playing out their high school career, I think we need to let kids be kids. Oftentimes when we're talking about APs, we're talking about this course load, our kids don't have time to really explore what it means to be a kid. They don't have time to explore their interests. They don't have time to authentically experience what it's like to be a child who doesn't have any idea what they want to do. So for this year, for next year, and the rest of their high school, I think it's imperative that students pursue interest instead of what looks better on an eventual transcript. This is just something quick to throw out there. I mentioned mental health. I mentioned that there are some challenges that our students face, and I know that challenges, especially now in COVID, don't just wait for the stress of junior year. If your student needs help now, and if I am not the person that you would like to speak to, this is a hyperlink to the Medfield interface service that will be sent out to you after this presentation. If you're not familiar with the interface service, it essentially does all of the legwork for you in getting either yourself or your child in with a therapist. They take an intake. It's a 20-minute free service. They'll ask about your insurance. They'll ask about your preference. Would your child like to meet with an older guy, a younger woman, so on and so forth. And within, I believe it is 10 days, they will have an appointment for you with a local area provider. We've used this for the past handful of years, and the feedback that we've gotten has been incredibly positive. People have found this to be an incredibly helpful service. The beauty as well is that you can use this as many times as you want. So if your child gets connected with a therapist and it's not a good fit, you can try this as many times until you find somebody who is going to work for either yourself, your family, or your child. The point, I think, of this specifically is times are hard. Eric mentioned it. COVID has really upset the apple cart for many of our lives. And now more so than ever, I think it's important to reach out and get help should you need it. So with that said, I am now going to kick this off to Ann Lodge, who is going to discuss your sophomore year next steps.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Russ. So I think, throughout the course of the last 45, 50 minutes, you guys have heard a lot about what we're working on with sophomores and what we hope that you guys as families are talking about at home, right? So we're thinking about ultimately how to help students find the right fit and balance, whether that comes to what comes immediately next in terms of their course selection process, or what comes a little bit further on down the line in terms of a college that they might go to or choosing a career. So really our ultimate goal is to help students really discover a little bit more about who they are, where their interests are, where their values are, where their skills are, so that we can use all of that information to support them and figuring out that next best step for them. Right. So as we're taking all of this information into consideration, when we're thinking about sort of next steps in the short term for sophomore year specifically for students, we're hoping that they're able to use these resources that we're sharing with them in the classroom on Friday and that we shared with you today through Naviance and through My Big Future to help inform a little bit of those next steps for them, to think about the electives that they might take coming up for next year and senior year, to help them think about how those types of things might fuel their future interests and their path for life after high school graduation, and to have a better understanding of who they are. We've mentioned course selection a couple of different times, and it's right here for us right now. So students will have the opportunity to begin selecting their courses starting this Friday afternoon, so Friday, March 5th, and they'll have the following week until Friday, March 12th to complete those course selections. So this is a great opportunity for them to really take the information that we're going to be sharing with them on Friday, to digest it a little bit, and maybe to use that information to help them think about some elective course offerings during their junior and senior year. There are so many resources that we have available for students as they continue to navigate their sophomore year in terms of building a resume, resources on our guidance webpage about future planning, about jobs and internships. There really are a ton of resources, but one of the things we really encourage most for students at this point is to take the time to get to know your guidance counselor. So with this class in particular, they didn't have a full freshman year face-to-face with us. We had a little over a half a year with them. And this year at the start of the year, it's been really disjointed. So I think this is an even more opportune time right now in the second half of their sophomore year to spend a little time with their guidance counselor, to set up an appointment with us to talk about their electives and their course offerings, or to talk about their vision for the future, or maybe even just to digest some of this information that they're going to be exploring through the classrooms with us on Friday, to talk about what came of their career results and their interest inventories. I think it's a nice jumping off point for us to continue to develop the relationships with your sons and daughters as we navigate towards the second half of the high school experience, where we really will be doing a lot of work together as a team to help support them in figuring out life after high school graduation. Beyond that, as students are beginning to sort of take all of this into consideration and they're thinking about what might happen for them beyond grade 10, and that future planning process really comes into part of the conversation on a more regular basis. Some of the things that they can be thinking about at this point in time are things like attending a virtual college fair. It's not the right move for every sophomore right now. A lot of them aren't ready. They're not willing to think about next steps yet, or they're not ready to think about next steps, and that's totally fine. But for the population of students that might want to just start exploring things a little bit, even if they don't have any real sense in mind right now of what in particular they're looking for life after high school graduation, attending some of these college fairs virtually might be a nice opportunity for students. There actually are a number that are coming up relatively soon. So the NACAC Virtual College Fair, so that's the National Association of College Admission Counseling, and they have tons of opportunities for students in these fairs to interact with admission representatives and also to attend some breakout sessions to learn a little bit more about the college search and application process. And actually the first fair that's coming up for them is on March 7th. So this weekend, and it's a specific a fair specific to STEM colleges and STEM programs. Later on, they have more specific ones in March 16th. There's a performing and visual arts college fair. March 21st is just a regular college fair. The My Big Future that Elise had talked about through College Board, they also sponsor college fairs virtually for students at this point. They happen to have one on March 7th as well this weekend, and that is specific to the Northeast. They tend to break out their college fairs by region, so where colleges are located. So these are two great resources that students can begin to navigate a little bit as they're ready. If your son or daughter takes the career assessments later on this week and they're feeling really motivated to learn a little bit more about their interests, and they're thinking towards the summer and what they might be able to do with their interest to explore them further, I think it's a great opportunity for students to begin to think about summer jobs or summer internships. So Teen Life Boston is a great resource for students where you can search internship and summer camp and summer job opportunities in the Boston area. And the tech internship program is actually, tech is the education cooperative. We collaborate with them as a community in Medfield and a number of other surrounding communities as well. And they offer internship opportunities for students every year as they're entering junior year or entering senior year. And their summer programs, their internships, if students are applied and admitted to the program, they take place over 4 consecutive weeks, 2 to 3 days during those weeks, for a total of about 60 hours. It is an internship that you actually pay to participate in. So it is structured a little bit differently, but it is a nice opportunity, and the feedback that we've received from students who have participated in these internship programs in the past has been positive. And again, the guidance website, and also there's a job board that we keep in the guidance office. So as we learn about opportunities that might be available locally in the community for students to have a job over the summer, we will post that on our job board in the guidance office as students are starting to think forward towards the summer months and what they might want to be doing. And then finally, this is a lot of information. Back at the beginning, Stephanie had mentioned that we would also be sharing with you some pre-recorded sessions that are available for you to peruse at your leisure if you are interested. And we have sessions available on future planning for athletes, musicians, and theater or art students. information about alternative future plans, so life other than college, right? Looking at gap year programs, military, the vocational options for students, and then a session specifically on future planning for students with disabilities. So as we share out this recorded session with all of you in the next day or so, you will also have the links to these recorded sessions that you can watch if you so choose. But we would certainly encourage you, as you continue to move forward, to have conversations with your sons and daughters about their career assessments that they'll be doing after they take them on Friday, and to begin to explore those conversations a little bit further with them. And then we certainly always invite you to reach out to us, reach out to your child's guidance counselor. Let us know where you have questions. Let us know where you feel like you need support so that we can help you navigate the second half of high school, and hopefully it's a positive experience for everyone. I want to just take a minute here to see if anyone has any lingering questions. This really does conclude our program for today. But if anyone has any questions that they feel were not addressed during this session and you feel would be beneficial for the group, if you want to type something in the Q&A section here, we can certainly answer any questions live. If you feel like you have a question that's more specific to your child, feel free to reach out to your child's guidance counselor individually. And for those of you who feel like you have no questions and are ready to move on with your day, certainly feel free to do so. But we'll just wait here for a couple minutes in case anything pops up. And I'm actually seeing a question come in right now. So the question is, what is the tech internship program again, and what type of careers? So the internship program through tech, it's an application based program, and you do have to pay a fee to participate in the program. It's over the course of 4 weeks for a total of 60 hours. And when students apply, they're actually able to indicate the career areas that they're interested in. They usually enter a first choice and a second choice. And the internship coordinator is then able to help place them hopefully in their first choice area, but if not in their first choice, oftentimes in their second choice area. They actually have a number of information sessions that they offer to share with families additional information about this process. And when we do send out this link, you'll also have the link. When we send out the presentation, you'll have the link directly to the tech internship site as well. But there is an information session actually tomorrow, March 4th, is the next one that you would be able to sign up for. And everything is a Zoom link at this point. There's another one April 7th, and the final one for the year will be on May 6th. I'll give it just another minute in case anyone has any other questions. Okay, well, I think that probably concludes our program for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope that it was valuable information for you, and we certainly are looking forward to future conversations as we move forward with your sons and daughters. Thank you.